talking about another microfinance lender, Shefali Malik from our research team. She caught up with the founder and managing director of Ujjivan Small Finance Bank, Samit Ghosh, and started off by asking him about the applicability of higher limit on small loans. Listen.
I mean, it applies in part because, the income limits are the same parameters which determine whether these are going to be PSL or non-PSL. So that's applicable to banks and also for NBFC MFIs. But as far as the loan limits are concerned, banks did not have loan limits. So this increase in loan limit from 1 lakh to 1,25,000 is going to be helpful for the NBFC MFIs. But as far as banks were concerned, there were no limits earlier, so the loan limits earlier. So it doesn't make a difference to us.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, for banks, there was no limit earlier. So actually you can lend,
Yeah.
So you can lend as much, you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, there was no loan limits applicable for banks. The loan limit was applicable only for NBFC MFIs, which has increased from 1 lakh to 1,25,000.
Sir, in that case, now that NBFC MFIs have a higher limit that they can lend, so do you think that the competition will increase from that space and a certain amount of your AUMs will actually shift there?
Well, in terms of now the microfinance institutions can lend up to 1,25,000, so the limits will increase, but I think that will be a gradual increase. It will not be a one-time increase because there is already some concern in the industry that in pockets there has been overextension of credit. So I don't think anyone is going to jump into it and increase the limits, but gradually the limits will increase to 1,25,000 from 1 lakh. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, just help me understand the on-ground picture a little bit more, because from what I understand is that even though the limit was 1 lakh earlier, let's say in the rural areas, and 1.6 lakhs in the semi-urban and urban households earlier, even though the limit has been increased, but even the earlier limits were not being utilized to the fullest extent earlier. So how will this help? Like you said, is it going to be gradual how will it pan out according to you?
It's going to be gradual because I think earlier MFIN had set a limit of 60,000, which they later, because RBI increased it to 1 lakh, they went up to 1 lakh. And so that 1 lakh limit everyone was adhering to that, But now that it is increased to 1,25,000, people will slowly, gradually increase it. I don't think people will jump and increase it because, as I said, there are some concerns in some pockets. There is overextension of credit, etc. So people will not, jump into it and increase the loan AUMs all at once,
Okay. So talking about overextension of loans or over-leveraging, is it leading to any sort of asset quality issues that you're seeing, not just for you, but across the industry?
No, we have not seen anything, and I don't think, there is a lot of talk that, whenever we meet bankers, they tell us, in the East, there is overextension of credit. We are very active in the East, and we frankly have not seen any deterioration in our portfolio, and we have full faith in, the players there who are the big, like Bandhan, etc. They know what they're doing. And we have not seen any kind of deterioration in quality. The only places where there is some impact is, this year we've had a lot of floods all over India, and there the SLBC announces some kind of a relief mechanism for the flood victims. So there, temporarily, we would have had problems, but that also comes back to normal very fast, like what has happened in Kerala, what has happened in Odisha, etc.
Mr. Ghosh, now that you're here with us, I want to know that couple of days back, MFIN and Sadhan collaborated to launch Code for Responsible Lending. And I was, the other day interacting with this person at Sadhan, and he told me that this platform includes all banks, NBFC, MFIs, and everybody in the industry. So first of all, is this code a voluntary code, or is this mandatorily binding on all?
So it is a voluntary code, and I think slowly everyone will sign up for that code. There are some issues which needs to be ironed out on the code itself, and I think there has to be discussions right across all the different types of players, whether there are microfinance institutions, small finance banks, and banks. And generally, everyone is agreed to the limits which has been set up by the Reserve Bank. That is, that earlier was 1 lakh, and now it is up to 1.25 lakhs. There is no disagreement over that, But there are some minor points, wrinkles which have to be ironed out, and I'm sure everyone will sign in.
Sir, one part was, of course, the limit which you spoke about. The other part of that code was that a client can only borrow from maximum 3 loan providers. So how will that shape up the industry?
See, that 3 lender providers is not something which is mandated by the Reserve Bank of India. And it was done earlier when, frankly, from a credit perspective, the most important aspect is the amount of extension of credit, not the number of lenders, And there was confusion, who should be included in this 3? Should it be only NBFC, MFIs, or banks, or SFBs, etc.? So our request has been that instead of having this 3 lender business, let's just abide by what the RBI has set. It is 1 lakh and 1,25,000 now. That is the limit we should go with.
Okay.
Because this 3 lender business really doesn't make sense, and it adds to the confusion.
Okay. Sir, shifting focus back to your operations, it's about the deposits traction right now in the industry. It was as it is difficult in last couple of months, and now there's also trust deficit that has creeped in with some of the mid-sized private banks, facing a lot of issues. So what is it that you are seeing, among your customers?
No, frankly, there is no trust deficit as far as small finance bank is concerned. Any of the small finance banks. The trust deficit, as you know, is also with very well-established names and with some cooperatives. In fact, most of us are getting the benefit of people moving away from, say, cooperative banks and things like that, and moving their deposit to small finance banks. So from the small finance bank perspective, there's no issue at all. In fact, it is a sort of an advantageous situation.